Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode and show on the podcast here, where we are discussing growth in all its forms. And the purpose for this is to help those of you who are really looking for transformative development and growth to get some of the best strategies, tactics, principles, philosophies from some of the best around the world. And we don't just focus on the core elements of growth. We'll be looking at everything that encompasses that. So from health to mindset, even down to your body language and human behavior. So today I am delighted to have with me a guest who, someone who has actually been in the software industry for over 3 decades. And he has held many sales leadership roles in both small and large firms. He's currently the Chief Revenue Officer of OneUp Sales. And OneUp Sales provides business leaders and their salespeople with performance reporting software with an element of gamification to increase motivation. So it's really interesting. I'm truly delighted to have him on our show, and I expect this to be a highly informative and provocative discussion about sales in the SaaS world especially. So please help me welcome someone who has received 400 glowing recommendations on his LinkedIn profile alone about how amazing he is as a sales leader, Mr. Ian Moeed. Ian, welcome to the show. It's great to have you on.
Moeed, thank you. And you've certainly done your homework, so I appreciate that.
Well, it's my pleasure. And that's hopefully one of the things we will cover in our discussion around sales and how they do their homework as well, because it's a topic that has come up in a lot of episodes and it's dear to my heart. So let's start with the first question. Let's hold no punches here. How would you describe the state of the sales profession right now?
Yeah, so I see the good, the bad, and the ugly. So part of the benefit I get is in the role I'm in, I get to interview salespeople, right? So that's one piece. But I also am part and active in a number of sales associations, and have the pleasure of being a judge on a number of sales awards, such as the Women in Sales Awards. So I get to meet lots of salespeople from different industries at different stages of their career and get that insight. And I also sit on something where we're trying to promote professionalism in the sales industry, and that sales is a profession. It is not just a job, and it is a skilled profession. Unfortunately, sales has a negative reputation often. And wrapping into that, unfortunately, a lot of salespeople lend themselves to that reputation. And you alluded to one there, and we talked about, we very briefly touched on research, and a lot of salespeople, I think, don't go the extra mile, don't do the basics well, and get away with it. Because if there's a lot of average, you can afford to be average. So I always say to my salespeople, whether they're inside sales, external, junior, or senior, the good is, when you come across that, is I don't want salespeople at other organisations being as good as us, because it make our job. If every salesperson was really good, boy, would this be a lot harder. It would.
Absolutely.
It would. But there's a lot of average out there, unfortunately, and I think that lends itself to why a lot of people have disdain or negativity towards salespeople. We've all heard it, and we all hear salespeople who introduce themselves with different illustrious titles, right? And you have to virtually pry out of them. So are you a salesperson? Well, I'm this and this. Yeah, but it's a yes or no question. Are you a salesperson? Yes. I'll openly tell people I am at heart a salesperson, regardless of the title, Chief Revenue Officer or VP of it, whatever I've got. I'm in sales. There's nothing to be, if you do it well and practice it well and treat it as a profession, why shouldn't you be proud of saying, yes, I am a salesperson? The fact that lots of people hide it tells you exactly the problem that we have in that there is, and we've all got a horror story. You ask anyone, I had this salesperson try and force me to buy this one. Well, that's not what sales is about. It's about putting prospective customers in a safe place to engage with you, to find out if this is the right product or service to give them value. And if it is, we'll find a way to do business together, not to convince people to buy things they shouldn't have or don't need.
Mm-hmm. So you've alluded to a very mature approach to sales. And I want to use the word mature, may not be the right word, but it's the best that I can think of right now. it's less about pushing. It's more about almost like how I've always viewed a traditional excellent business relationship, which is I come to you with something that I see that you're going to need based upon homework that I've conducted. And we have a mature and honest discussion about that rather than I force feed something to you that actually is not going to work out for you. So, how, in a nutshell, what are the core things? Because you've got all this experience in interviewing and interviewing salespeople as well as on those awards. What separates the great from the bad then?
So, yeah, one analogy would sum it up, I think, is telling is not selling. My biggest bugbear and the biggest skill in sales, in my opinion, is questioning and active listening to the answer. But it's fundamental, it's basic, right? So the number of sales individuals where if I ask them, what would you improve? What could you be better at? And how many of them ever say questioning? Because, well, if I say that, it means I must be junior. They'll come out with, well, enterprise negotiation techniques. Okay, well, a lot of that's questioning, but they want to feel like it's more illustrious. I am still honing my questioning today, 30 years on. And anyone listening to this, some people go, well, you're not that good then, are you? You should be better at it. Well, no, because you can always improve, right? You want to be a master of engaging and questioning. And unfortunately, I think a lot of salespeople go through that basic questioning, ask open questions, Kipling's friends, who, why, what, where, and all this sort of thing. And a couple of years in, well, I've got it. I've got all that now. That's done. I've learned that now. Well, that's like saying to a racing car driver, you've learned how to drive, so you're done now. Every single race they do, they're getting better. They're practicing it. Footballers go and train. Why do they bother? Because they're in the top league, right? Why do they need to go to a training session and practice? Because they're there now. What more could you learn? It's that attitude. And I think fundamentally, a lot of the methodologies that we see in sales, and there are a plethora of them, Spin, Scotsman, Bant, Taz, etc., lead to that behavior because they're used to they're taken as read, right? So, for example, let me give you a practical example, which I like to make things simple. Bant, nothing wrong. I'm not only picking on that one as an example. They're all the same challenge in my view. That says find out the budget authority need timescale. Okay. But what a lot of salespeople do, well, that's the questioning methodology then. So what's your budget? I don't care what your budget. I don't care if you haven't got a budget because I want to have a conversation with you and I want to understand everyone's got challenges, problems, gains, top and bottom line things they might need to achieve or pains you want to take away or gains you could get. I want to understand what's going on. Some of that to find out, is there an area with my knowledge and experience of what I'm doing here, is there an area where I could help you with some of that and bring value, in which case the conversation will enable me to develop the need, inform you and discuss that type of area. And it may turn out there's common ground where I can bring you value, in which case you will create a budget if there needs to be one. But if I say, is there a budget, and you say no, how many salespeople have been trained to, oh, right, well, that's not that's not worth having a conversation then because you haven't got a budget right now. And what's your timescale? Well, there's no timescale because I don't have a budget and I'm not thinking of a project. Wrong questions, right? And because they're using them formulaically rather than having a conversation and asking people about, I'm talking to a lot of people in the similar sector to you today. Many of them are giving me insight into some of their problems and challenges and how they're fixing them. I don't know if you're the same, but I am assuming that there's likely to be some similarity. What are you finding, right? And you have a conversation. And through that, who knows where you're going to go? It's fluid. You can't have this rigid, I'm going to come in and go, I want to ask you this. Okay, based on that, I don't think you're going to spend some money with me quickly. Therefore, I'm going to move on to the next one. Yet someone else comes along, has a different conversation, using proper questioning skills. And guess what? You phone them back in 6 months, perhaps, and they go, I bought something. But you said there was no project and no budget and no need. And you bought my competitor. Yeah. guess what? They did a better selling job than you. Not through selling, not through and telling someone to buy something, but by listening and asking the right questions to figure out, is there value it can bring to you as a customer? And if there's value, there's a conversation worth having. And you, the customer, are likely to want that conversation. If you can see value to your business or to you as an individual, you will talk more. And it may be you buy something, it may be you don't at this point.
So before we go into additional areas, I have a feeling I know what your answer will be, but why do you feel salespeople really struggle with how to ask good questions?
Some of it is their training, coaching. That they've been told just learn these basic things and that's it. And some of it is from the sales leadership, right? It's the responsibility of sales leadership to coach and to be. If you're not good at it yourself, if you haven't learned it yourself, you're not going to expect or coach or support your team to be any different. I get it when I employ people and I watch them and they're listening to what they read on the internet and what other people are doing and they're coming up with this stuff. And I hone them back and say, look, and I take them through calls and I get them we do role playing, we do all that stuff, right? And coach them and listen to calls and go through it. And the number of times they're like, oh my gosh, this is like an art form. Yeah, it is. It is. It's about it's not just asking a question, it's how you phrase it. And often people are nervous or scared. They don't have the confidence to know how to position a question, particularly, Moeed, the hard questions, right?
Yeah.
Because often the harder ones are the ones where you get the most value. Yes. And you should be challenging that prospective customer, and you should be challenging them in the way of asking smart questions. And I've had customers, let me give an example. I remember a prospective customer who had met with 3 much larger vendors than the one I was working with for at the time. Mm-hmm. So obviously, well, they're more likely to go with these guys. With the edge case unknown provider. And I sat with this individual, I always remember this, sat with us for about 2 hours. And at the end of the 2 hours, the individual turned to us and said, he openly said, you know what, I've really enjoyed this conversation, but I'm tired. You have really asked me so many questions, and I'm a lot that I don't know the answer to. And he paused and said, and I like that because you haven't shown me any product, you haven't done a demo, we positioned at the beginning, look, there's a reason why we're going to ask all these questions and to find out if we're the right thing for you to do the right job. So I don't want to jump into that. We're happy to show you stuff, but we feel there's more value in this at this point. And if we get there, we'll show you some stuff happily, blah, blah, blah. And he said, I've learned more about my project because I've got a list of questions in. No one else has asked me. I've met with 3 other vendors and they very quickly, as fast as they could, asked a lot of basic questions and then got into, look how big we are, look at all the customers we got, look at about us. You've shown more interest in me and my business and my project. You've challenged me and asked questions, but I don't know the answer to and I need to go and find out. You've given me more value in this 2 hours than I've got from all the other meetings. And all we did was ask questions and ask questions on questions of, but why do you want to do it that way? Yeah. No one else, I don't know, because I haven't thought about that. No one else has asked me that. We found out more in that meeting than any other competing vendor. The individual found more about their own project, and it developed more rapport, which led to further meetings and discussions, because he had to go away and come back to us with questions and answers that the others hadn't even asked. So we had more engagement within it. We won that deal. Now, we didn't just win it because we asked the right questions. You can still do that and lose, right? Or find that you're not the right solution for that customer, in which case, sure, you exit the process and you save yourself and them effort, in which case the questioning did its job. It's a win-win, however you look at it. But most people aren't doing that. They fall into this formulaic, ask a few questions, look a wonderful job I've done, and how fast can I get now to showing them something and telling them how good we are.
Yeah, I discovered this quite a few years back, where the quality of the results of your life is determined by the quality of the questions that you ask. And it's not just questions you ask the other person, it's the questions you ask yourself, right? And I observed this in quite a few very successful salespeople, where they come prepared with questions because they've been asking questions before the call. What do I need to know about this person? what can I find out? What can't I get the answers to right now, but I will need to ask them about this later on. It's not just the questions we ask on the call with the buyer, it's the questions we ask ourselves before we've even entered into that sales meeting or sales call. Yep. But I also see that there are a lot of other forces at play, right? It's not just the skills that they are being trained on. The determination of what those skills need to be is actually empowered by the sales leader, who he or she has an ulterior motive. And that motive might be quick sales, right? They're all about quarterly results, weekly KPIs. They're also being placed pressure by the CEO, whose intention might be sell my SaaS business in 5 years so I make my millions and I can have an ego now to share with others, who is then being forced down by the investors because they've selected the wrong investors, who also want to be able to sell and have a get out in 5 years' time, again, because they want to make more money and probably strokes their ego. So in your view, after doing this for so long, what in your view is the anatomy of a great sales leader? Because they will have some form of control. And if they have the courage, they can also push back with some of those CEOs and protect their salespeople and develop the right skills, the right environment, the right culture. So what's your anatomy for a great sales leader?
Yeah, Moeed, you partly answered it there. I was going to say the pushback piece. Absolutely. Your responsibility is to the business and to drive the numbers and the success, but it's also to the customer. And that reflects on the business, right? You don't want to bring customers on who aren't the right customers, aren't the right fit, because it leads to, low customer satisfaction, churn, particularly in the SaaS market that I'm in. It's not just about customer acquisition; it's about retention as well. If your bucket's leaking at the bottom, you've got to keep filling at the top, and you're in a bad place. But you're right; it's impacted by the business, by the culture. And too often, it's all about the number, particularly in listed companies with a shareholding or someone looking to exit. It's at any cost, we've got to hit this number this quarter. And how often do we see that behavior reflected down to a customer being dissatisfied with being pressured by a salesperson to do something in an unnatural timescale?
Yeah, absolutely.
And so the real beauty is, and I'm not going to say this is a cookie cutter easy thing, but it's to get to a place where you've got the pipeline you need, you're managing that business as a sales leader and the sales individuals, and protecting upwards, that you don't end up in that situation, but you're delivering the number, in which case you get the best of both worlds. But is that easy? No, it's not. I've done this again and again in smaller firms. 4 of them we've exited, and I'm doing that now with the business I'm in. But you've got to have, but I've also, let me be fair, I've also exited a company where that culture wasn't there. So I wasn't supported in that. And it was, well, look, if I can't push back upwards and be allowed to drive the business, the growth that balances the two needs, right? The needs of the business, but the needs of the customer. If you don't have that, you can make a choice. You either succumb and fall into that bad place, or you can walk. And I chose in one instance to walk because it was obvious that didn't matter. It was going to be the bad place. And personally, I care about my reputation and the reputation of my salespeople in front of the customer. You kindly at the beginning cited how many recommendations I've got, and that's proof of the pudding. I care. I want to have a customer who, if I in 10 years' time bump into them in another place, in another world, of us both in different jobs, they may not be in the right position to buy my product or service, but I want them to be able to be willing to take my call, engage with me, and remember me in a positive fashion of, even if they didn't buy from me, Ian was professional, and I will give him the time again because I have respect and trust of that individual. How many salespeople can't go back to certain customers again in their career? They can't, because of the way that customer believed that individual, pushed them, missold. They didn't like the behavior. And there are many large organizations out there. There's certain organizations where I speak to individuals and customers, and they pretty give a consistent story of the aggressive sales nature of that organization. And it's consistent across the organization. So that's a cultural thing, to your point. And all that business cares about is the numbers. But at some point, that comes back on you at some point. It does not do you good, give you good equity with customers for growth. It's it's a decision you've got to make. And I made the decision. I want to be seen as a professional salesperson throughout my career, be proud of what I achieve, and yes, I will lose some deals, and yes, I will walk away from places where it's not the right thing to do, but that's the right thing for the customer and your business.
So the question that leads to is, so do you need to find CEOs who share those values, or can you convince CEOs to see that approach as the best approach?
I think it can be both. And from my experience, I've had CEOs who I've had the pleasure twice. I've worked for the same CEO twice, if that makes sense. So I've worked for this CEO twice and this one twice. So I've come back. And I've pushed back on those CEOs, when they've said this is the way to do things, and it's CEO's prerogative to raise things like that, that they founded the company. But in my opinion, if you're a strong sales leader and they've got belief in you, they will listen and let you push back. But you've got to then deliver. You can't push back and say, we're not doing it this way. And then a year later, you've delivered nothing. You don't know that they were right, but you certainly know you were wrong. But I stand to my laurels, and I've pushed back and educated back upwardly before, even to the point of we should run with this project, even though I've had a CEO say, I don't think we'll win this. Here's all the reasons, and they're logical, but I've convinced them I believe we will, and here's why: because I have, my questioning, qualification, everything we've done, and constantly, several times now, in companies come in and bought, they've been around for years, and within a very short period, bought the biggest customer to that business globally into the business anew, against all the odds, and that's through just doing what I always do, which is doing the basics very well habitually.
Well, let's get into that. Let's get into that then, right? Because I would love to learn what those basics are. So you found a company or CEO that you believe in. You're entering that business now. What does your first 100 days look like?
Yeah, so
what do you focus on?
Yeah, so the first thing is assimilate. And I've seen people do. I've been on the other side of watching the converse of that. I've watched a sales leader come into a business above me. So I'm a sales leader, global sales leader, and within a week, know everything they need to know and start making wild decisions that affect people, that affect process, customers, strategy, etc. And my belief, I don't know how you can do that. And the way and their approach was, well, I've had all these look how important I am and all this stuff, and I'm going to emboss it on the company and say, this is what we do, this is how we transform the business. I can't do that. Now, if others can, well done, but I take longer than a week to assimilate. I want to talk to people, I want to understand, I want to talk to customers, I want to talk to prospective customers, I want to get my hands dirty to really understand what am I dealing with, because I can come in and say, well, look, I've got strategies, I've got methodologies, but how am I going to deploy them in this organization? Do I just do exactly what I've done in the last one? Well, how do I know? There's certain guidelines I work within that work for me to grow a business and bring growth, but I want to look at what are the challenges, what has worked, why, and then ask lots of questions. It's back to the questioning. Okay, this is what's our average profile of customer? What's our average time to bring them on board and get them live? What's our average lifespan of a customer? What's our churn rate? Boom, 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 all these things. And then ask, okay, why? And when we lose a customer, tell me 5 customers that have churned over there. Okay, put me through why they churned. And I want to hear, I want to get that feeling of what's going on. And I want to talk to some customers. What did you find? What was good? Really get to understand, the same as you would do in a customer engagement. The more you understand, the more questions you ask, the more you can make wiser decisions. So it's listening, it's learning about what's going on. And then during that process, I'm formulating plans, both tactical and strategic. Tactical is, what can we get on with quickly? What small gains? What can we stop, start, and continue? What isn't working? What are we doing that just doesn't make sense, that we're doing because either no one's questioned it before, or no one's realized it doesn't make sense, or no one's challenged it because, for example, the CEO put that idea in place 3 years ago, and no one's put their hand up to say this. Now maybe it did then. Now this doesn't make sense. Look, this is not. We're doing all this activity, but it's not generating the results. So can we not? Why wouldn't we stop it? Help me understand why we would not stop this piece. So I look at what the tactical things are I can change, and those are things that we can start to emboss some change that is not disruptive to the individual. Because coming in, it's so easy just to go, I know it all, change things, and you've got to get people on board with you for that journey. And the way to do it, in my experience, is to get them on board, not tell them they're on board.
Right.
So I look for tactical changes I can make to get some early wins, some things where I can change, where it starts to move in the right direction, that they can therefore start to earn trust and respect for you, earn, not demand. The strategic stuff takes a bit longer, right? You can't come in and make a strategic change 2 weeks into the business, disrupt everything. People will be doubting it. People will be resistant to it because it's been that way for years. And who are you to come in and change this and do this sort of thing? So I formulate a tactical and strategic plan that is fluid, that is A, based on all the stuff I'm assimilating, B, has involvement of the people that have been there for years. Not that they make the decision, not that it's by vote or consensus, but they're involved in the plan and they're taken on the journey and they're explained why and how this might work. And they've got a voice to contribute. Challenge me, guys. If you don't think it'll work, tell me why, and we will have an open debate about it. I'm not saying I'm right, I'm not saying you're wrong, but be involved in this. And I often have people say, well, I'm not sure this will work. Okay, help me understand why. And we still go on the journey. And I've had people come back to me a year, 2 years in to that journey and saying to me over a beer, over a drink, casually, do you know what? When you came in and you told us we'd move from this type of customer to this average size, that we were dealing with 5 users before, and now I'm dealing with 100 and 200 user customers. I've had them say to me blatantly to my face, do you know what? When you said it, we didn't believe you. We didn't believe you, but we believed you knew what you were doing. But now, oh my gosh, I've got customers of 300 users now, 500 users. I've had salespeople who didn't even think they were capable of that. They'd never done it before. And they'd siloed themselves. They'd set their own limiting beliefs of, well, we've laid out our stall. Our customers are 5 to 10 users. And I don't know how to get into bigger customers or what to do or how to change it or how to hit bigger numbers or how to earn more commission and do this. What they need is a framework and someone to show them how to do it and to change other things in the business, not overnight, but help support them, right? Make the sales environment easier. And that's a combination of what you do to coach them, their skills, marketing, support, so everything in the business, everything that might need to change to make the sales environment easier for them to win in a different place. And it's not easy, but you can have a formula that does it. I've done this again and again and again in different technologies in different size businesses.
Can you describe that formula in more detail?
Sure. So what is understanding, looking at what you've got and getting a baseline for all the key metrics. So metrics such as what's your average deal size, right? Who's your ideal persona of customer, or at that point, who's your persona of customer?
Right.
Too often, people, that's a self-limiting belief of who do we sell to? We sell to customers like this. Okay, that's our customers then. No, that's your customers today. You should be asking, why is that our customer? Is it something we targeted? Is it something we fell into? How have we evolved that that's our average customer in a vertical or a geographic region, whatever it is? How and why? Okay. And is that the one that best serves our business and our growth? Could we sell into a different vertical? And if not, why not? And have we tried it before? There's question after question there, but it's looking at the metrics. I looked at baseline all the metrics. What's the average deal size? What's the average momentum of a deal? How long does it take from creation of a deal to closure? What's the win rate? Who do we compete against? Who do we lose most against? What's the loss rate against each competitor? Metric after metric, right? Have we documented all of those? And often they're not. Or if they are, have you documented the right metric? For example, what's your average customer size? It's this. Okay, let's look at the data. Okay, we've got two large extraneous customers that skew the whole number. You're telling me our average customer is 75 seats. If we took those two customers out of the 250 customers, making these up as examples, our average customer isn't 75 seats, it's 14 seats. So you use the mean average, which skews it based on the data set. Use median, different result. So actually your average is totally not what you're saying it is. So it's about baselining the metric, baselining them to an accurate metric and understanding what they are and setting that out and understanding why are those metrics where they are. Why does it take us 89 days on average to close a deal? Right? Why is our close ratio of leads that inbound to us 5 to 1 and leads that the SDR team creates 3 to 1 and leads that we do over here at 6 to 1? Why? What's different? Is our close rate of customers in France so different to the UK? Whatever it is, understanding that stuff, getting the metrics and then asking why. Now I know the baseline and I've got a lot of knowledge. Okay, what would it look like to get us to move the dials, right? Those are all dials, sales dials. We're not going to suddenly go from, if our average deal size really is 18 seats, we're not suddenly going to go to 90 overnight. I haven't got a magic wand, but could we move that from what I've assimilated? I think, and a lot of it's experience, I think we can move from 19 to 23 average over the next 6 months or 25, whatever it is you've calculated. And the deal, closing it in 89 days, let's get that to sub 80 days over the next 6 months. You work out metrics with a target period that are achievable, that go across all the metrics, right? And this is called marginal gains. And people will believe in them. You haven't said the mountain. I haven't said we're climbing the mountain. I said we're going up to base camp. You can see it there. And it's still an effort, but we're not climbing Everest. All we're going to do is get to base camp. Do you think we can do that as a team? Yeah, it's a bit of a push, but we can do that. So I set the metrics and I explain why, and we aim for them, and how we're going to do it, and methodologies we're going to do it, right? We're going to, for example, our win rate is 5 to 1 against this competitor. I've spoken to all of you. I think we can reduce that to 4 to 1 or 3 to 1, and here's how we're going to do it. And here's the competitive knowledge I've put together that you haven't figured out before. And I'm going to help you on some of those calls. And some of it is sales technique, some of it is knowledge, etc., etc. Blah, 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 blah. Here's what I find nearly every time. You go on that journey, and when you get to that milestone point, whether it's 3 months, 6 months, I usually pick something like 6 months, and then you can go 9, 12, etc., but not too short. That people, because if you've got to achieve them, right, or a good portion of them, because then you want for the next step in the journey. And invariably, 2 things happen. One is you get to that milestone. Yes, you'll miss a few of them, right? If you've set 10 KPIs and said, here's where I want to nudge each of them, but you overachieve quite a few of them, number one. And you don't just get them, you go past them. We said we're going to get to 23 seats average from 19. Our average over the last 6 months we've now got is 26, guys. We overachieved it, 27. So we did it, right? But we're ahead. Look at that. My gosh. And people now believe the journey you're on, number one. 2 is there's a compounding effect. If you increase your average deal size, you close deals faster, you increase your win rate, you lower your churn rate, you lower your discounting. Again, there's all these metrics. If you do all of them marginally, the compounding of those is, well, actually, because of this, we won 4 more deals than we would have won. They're a bit bigger. We won them more efficiently. We won them quicker. There's more. You get far better results by the compounding, but actually you just did everything a little bit better, rather than saying, right, we're going to move the average seats. We're going to do one thing. We move average seats from 19 seats to 65. And everyone looks at you blatantly, and then behind your back says, how the, don't believe it, and you don't achieve it. And then when you come to them again, yeah, I know we didn't do that. Now we're going to move to this number. Well, we don't believe what you did. Now they don't believe you. And it's all simple steps, right? It's all formulaic. It's all repeatable. The difference is the knowledge and the impact and the things you need to know. But the fundamentals are the same. There is a methodology which is repeatable. And part of that as a sales leader for me is, okay, here's the method, explaining it, documenting it, keep coming back to it so you're consistent in engagement, measure it on the journey as you go. You don't just wait 6 months and go, there's the metrics. You're constantly reminding people, look, actually, we've shuffled up a bit, guys, we're heading there. This is what, or look at this deal we just got, that's going to help. You're constantly reiterating everything that's happening back to those metrics. So people are honing in and they're remembering them and they expect you to cover it. And it's part of their DNA that they understand why all these metrics are important. And alongside that, you're coaching them, right? You're supporting them, you're part of it. You're coaching them and helping them win a deal so they get a better deal ratio. You're helping them on questioning techniques. You're helping them get better to be able to achieve those goals.
Wow, there's so much there, Ian. Questioning for me has been something that's close to my heart. And in my training programs, I've always said that questioning, the approach for questioning should be investigative curiosity. And investigative curiosity is a mixture of what is the reality and not being afraid to ask the right questions, whether they're easy or tough, in order to understand what the new reality is. And just hearing the way you describe the approach, a lot of it was around, okay, I first assimilate, right? I need to understand the business in a good way, right? Without jumping the gun. And that's, I get the hint that what you also say within that is it's not just understanding the numbers and the situation, it's almost kind of feeling the pulse of the business, which is almost the cultural element of the business. And then you start to ask questions because you probably have the courage and the experience and you probably don't care, right, what people may think. You just want to get to the answer, which is, well, we've done that before, but what's stopping us from doing X? And all that seems to be connected to the context, which is the ultimate metrics, right? So it's not 50 or so metrics. It sounds to me like I tend to look for all my clients, I tend to look at 6 core major metrics. And it seems like you have the same approach. And every activity that we are conducting, whatever my support is, whatever the actions are, they all must in some way feed towards improving one of those 6 metrics or maybe more of those. But the thing that I really like, which I heard from other people, is I always look at 2% shifts or what I call shunts. 2% shunts across multiple different areas will give you 10 to 15, maybe 20% changes. Yep. And it sounds like you're doing the same, right?
Yep.
But the level of clarity in which you're describing it is far more so than I've heard from other sales leaders, which is, here are the numbers. We want to get to base camp rather than the Everest Mountain. The Everest Mountain is the vision. This is the glorious, glorious journey. But we're only going to focus on 1 inch at a time, right? That's the first base camp. Let's get to that first. And then we can talk about the second level, third level. So it's incredible the way that you've described that. My next question is for the sales leaders, the aspirational sales leaders, right? Those that aspire to become great sales leaders. And the beginning of that journey usually happens with first-line sales managers. However, from all the research and observation out there, my own observations and research and my own experiences, what passes for good with sales managers is actually really bad. And it's not always their fault. Actually, they're almost in their own way have been set up to fail, not maliciously, but they have been set up to fail. Why do you feel first-line sales managers have such a hard time?
So I think there's a multitude of things, right? An obvious one is how many of them have been promoted from being the successful salesperson to now managing the team, because that's the next step. And they often go into what I witness is sort of the actor mode. What should a manager do? And if they haven't, the good is if they've been around other good managers and leaders. That's how I learned, was working with other people and mimicking, right? You learn from what's around you, what you experience. And if they haven't had that, unfortunately, a lot of them haven't, is they go into this mimicking or acting in piece of, well, what do I think a manager is? I'm leading people. I'm telling people what to do, and I step back. I'm still hands-on, right? I've got whatever title it's been. I want to know what's going on still. I want to, jump on a call. I say to my team, my job is to empower you to be as successful as possible and earn as much money as possible. By doing so, you have to hit your targets to achieve that. But by doing so, it helps me be successful. My job is to empower you, remove obstacles, the servant leader manager approach, and get out your way, set you up to win and get out your way, put you on the penalty spot, make you the best football. I don't know why I give football analogies. I don't follow sport at all, but get you the best you can, get you the training, the coaching, get you ready to take the penalty. But I'm not coming up to take the penalty for you in the final, right? But I've put you in the best place possible that you're going to nail that, because I, as the manager, want you to win. We need to win the game. And it's my overall. If we lose, guess what? Everyone blames me. If we win, they thank the player. But it's to put you in a place where you can be as successful as possible as each individual. And I think too often managers forget that. They lose the hands-on. They forget what's going on. How many of them become spreadsheet jockeys, or are more worried about the upward piece, how they look to management, how they look above, and they've got this title now, than getting on with their job and getting their hands dirty. They don't know what to do. So they take on what they think is the role. How should I behave? What's the behavior supposed to be? Okay, and let's act that way. And they get it wrong. Because if they haven't done it before, should they be speaking to a customer now, or should they make a cold call? Should they? My view is, I want to be, particularly when I join a company, I want to be as hands-on as possible. Because right now, when I joined this company I'm with, I was the first. I had to build my team out. I was doing demos, back to grounds basic, right? And I know what's involved. I know what's involved through the sales work. As we grow, I will move slightly further away from that, as you have to, as you get a bigger team. But even when I ran a team of 40 salespeople across Europe, no, I wasn't on every call and doing everything, but I wanted to dip in. I wanted to go out. I wanted to speak about I wanted to be involved, so I still knew what their problems were, and I understood and could remove the obstacles. It wasn't the ivory tower approach of, I'm too busy, I'm doing the management report, the board report, whatever it is, and the sales, and all I do is come to the salespeople for, why haven't you done this? I'm hands-on today with salespeople on it. Why are we going to win this? And I'll question them. Right? They've had a conversation with a customer. If I should be mentoring and coaching them to be the best they can be and be the most successful, so if I'm not speaking to the customer, I'll question them. Why are we going to lose this deal? Why are we going to lose it? They don't expect that. And okay, I've got the details here. Why this? Why that? What if? I push questions to them where often they don't know the answers. And what it will provoke is me to say to them, so go to the customer, say you'd like to catch up with them, have a call, you would like an update, and you've got some value to add because there's some things you've missed. Apologize to them. Tell them, I haven't done the best job for you. No, what? I said, here's my coaching. I haven't done the best job for you because I missed some things. I've sat down internally with my sales manager, director, whatever, and we've gone through this, and it became obvious I should have asked you some questions that I didn't, to make sure we're doing the best job for you. Can I have a few moments to go through it? And that's professional selling, right? You're going to learn something. There's nothing. How many times salespeople won't go back because it's like they've got to do it the first time? Go back to them and tell them you've just realised, and they'll respect the fact that you're discussing them. You're investing your time to make sure you're doing the best job. You're discussing them internally, and something's come up, and you wanted to come back to them because you realised you had now something, and you're showing yourself as human. They're not. There's nothing wrong with that. I'll tell you what, the other 5 salespeople they're talking to probably didn't do it. So to come to you, it's would a sales manager do that? If they haven't been coached to this, they've just been given the job title. How do they know how do they know what good looks like in that role? That's the problem. That's the real one for me, is you get into that role, okay, well done. You're now managing people and you've got different responsibilities. what are the correct behaviors that you need to do, both for the business and your team and the customers, to deliver the results. And if no one's coached you for that, how do you know? So you fall into this assumed, how should I behave with this title? So for me, what's good is to have people work in environment with other people, is to see good. My opinion is the best way to learn good is to see good and work around others and see how they, shadowing. How if you've got a sales manager, you've got different divisions, don't let them have 2 hours with another sales manager and then that's it and off you go. You can do it now. The more time you invest in them being successful, the more they will be successful. But it's hard. There's no flick a switch and suddenly you know how to be a sales manager, leader, director.
Yeah, and the tough part is, as we talked about earlier, what passes for good may not be, as Marcus, someone that we both know, Marcus Kauke, what passes for good is not always fit for purpose, right? So there is that, but that, we can have probably another 2-3 hours discussion on that. But what I loved, and it's been an additional thread that you've had throughout this whole thing, is what I call just customer obsessed. And unfortunately, with sales leaders, I went through this myself, right? This was my perception, and I had to radically change that. People equate sales leadership promotion with distance from the customer. But actually, it's anything but. It just means that your channel and connection to the customer has changed. In fact, as a sales leader, it becomes more complex because you're having less direct interaction, so first-hand information from the customer. It's actually second-hand information. And you've got to do even more work in order to create and collect an accurate picture of what the customer is going through. So I loved what you've said there, because customer obsession has to be, in my view, the focal point of the business. It's not about what people call customer centricity or over service to the customer, because that will hinder your growth. It's being obsessed with really understanding your customer's world and their perspective. I always say that if you want to be able to understand your customer, if someone was to ask you, describe a day in the life of this customer, you would be able to describe it to such a level of detail that the person who asked you the question would be forgiven for thinking that you've done that role before.
Good point.
That's the level of detail. And I'm hearing that as a thread in everything that you've described, from what makes up the great salespeople to what makes great sales leaders, even down to, as a company, what makes a great company. So I've loved what you've said, and I think it's been incredibly informative. And we're running out of time, so there are a couple of questions that I would love to ask you. So the first one is, you talked about being able to shadow who's great, who's good, learn from who's good. Who are the people that influence you? Who are your greatest influences, or maybe even past influences, whether that's authors, thought leaders, whatever it may be? What are the greatest influences in your life and in your career?
So the first thing that comes to mind, but it's like plagiarizing what you just said, is customers, right? Is knowing what is really going on in the world. And I still today want to speak to customers and customers you've lost. That's a great one, right? Is having that
absolutely,
not to convince them anything differently, but purely the position of, I'd like to check it and ask, how did we do for you? What could we have done differently? And sometimes it's, look, your product doesn't do this, whatever. It's great. That's a learning. Great. But yourself great, or you could have been more responsive, or the competition did this that you didn't, and they allowed us to trial it. Well, it's all learning, right? In terms of individuals, I'm learning all the time from people around me, including the young people who work for me today in my team, because everyone has been on a different journey. So when I have a conversation with a customer, I tell my guys, every conversation with a customer or prospect is a learning exercise, because they've all been through a different journey. They're in different businesses, different stages of growth, different challenges. The more conversations you learn. When I do the awards and I meet salespeople, or I meet my peers of other sales leaders, constantly, it's about for me, it's as soon as I hit the realization, and I couldn't pinpoint what it was, that we're different because we've all been on a different journey and had different experiences. So we approach things differently based on our conditioning, our upbringing, and that journey we've been on, right? If you've worked in so certain sales environments, you'll behave and react and approach answers differently than someone who's been in totally different ones, right? But therefore, by observing that and giving people a voice, I can learn from that. So I've got two young SDRs who haven't worked in the tech sector before. They've worked in different areas that you would consider under the sales banner. And they're constantly coming to me with, how would I approach this? Or did I do this wrong? And I listen to calls with them and go through, and I often ask them, what would you do differently? What would you do next?
Yeah.
Rather than, oh, I've got the answer, and it's a conversation where we take part. And I often say to them, here's the challenge we've got. How are we going to do this? And let's talk it through together, because they will often come up with ideas that I am blinkered to based on experience that they're not. So to answer it, I'm learning from people. It's not I'm going to come up with some book author or one individual, Tony Robbins or someone like that, and go, oh, do you know what? I learn from everyone around me. I'm looking for marginal gains in my learning. Concept. I was on a call the other day, and there was something someone said, and I was like, oh my gosh, what a simple thing. Haven't come across that. I can use that. I can plagiarize that. There we go. I've learned something. I'm better today. Or it could be a customer ask me something about how we could help them with a problem or a feature of the product that I don't know the answer to. Great. I'm now being forced to ask a question I didn't think of. Now the answer means I've learned something. I'm better tomorrow than I was today. So for me, it's everywhere, all around you. There's an opportunity every day for how you behave in interacting with every conversation and everyone you speak to. It isn't one, I don't think one individual, no matter how great they are, you can learn everything from. So that's my view. I learn from everything I possibly can.
Yeah, I have to say, I'm a little disheartened by how rare that is. People sometimes ask me if there was one thing or a couple of things that you wish you'd done earlier. One of them was to realize the humility that I could learn from anyone. And it may not be massive learning, right? Life-changing knowledge or experience, but even the smallest thing that I could learn from anyone. And I think too often we find that a lot of people have too much of an ego, and there's an acceptable threshold of certain people they will learn from, and it's often the people that they view as having achieved more than they have or smarter than they are, etc. But actually you can learn from anyone if you're willing and open and not humble, but just willing and open enough to learn from those individuals. So I thought that was a fantastic answer. The other question that I have for you is, if there was one thing that you would want our viewers and listeners to take away from our session today, and I appreciate we've talked about everything from sales managers and leaders to salespeople, but if there was one thing that you would like them to walk away from and take really seriously and to really take to heart, what would that be?
So I think the underpinning one is always be learning, because the questioning, it covers the questioning thing, right? The skill I always want to get better at is questioning, and I constantly catch myself and go, oh, I could have asked better there, or I missed a question, even though I'm practiced at it and how to phrase it, verbiage and all the techniques, and I'm trying to make it habitual. I want to be the best question on the planet habitually without even thinking about it.
Yeah.
And I'm not there yet. I know I'm not there yet, but I'm better than a lot of people I deal with, and I'm coaching my team to get, I say to them, guys, I've been doing it for years, so it's not easy. It just takes time to make it a habit, but keep doing it and you get better. But it's across everything, right? Keep learning. You're not baked. I'm not baked. I've been doing it a long time. I'm still challenging myself. Get better tomorrow. What can I do in the next conversation? We're about to jump on a conversation. It's about this. What can I do differently? Whether it's how I phrase things, how I pace things. If I stand up to speak at an event, how can I make this the best speaking gig I've done? How can I engage the audience? How can I do better than I've done before? What don't I normally do? And or I don't want to stand. I remember I used to stand behind a lectern, as many people do, and then I got into walking around, and now I won't have a lectern, and I want to. I've got myself so far. Now, how do I get to the next? How do I be even better? How do I get content? How do I really, everything I do, I'm looking for, how do I get that marginal gain? How do I learn and be a bit better than I was before? And a lot often it's by plagiarization. It's watching someone else do things, whether it's a speaker. Oh, I like the way they did. Oh, I like the way they did between slides. They put a black slide up while they were talking to get the attention on. Oh, I like that. It's something small. Oh, I could start doing that, but I'm going to need to practice that. And I've done little things like that where I've then tried doing it. It's like, actually, you need to practice. You need to get a bit. It's not as simple as just do it. There's a technique. Oh, great! I'm now learning a new skill. I'm a bit better at it. So it's be receptive to change and learn and learn and learn.
Yeah, and I hope for all those that are watching this or listening to this, I hope you caught that Ian used learning with asking questions interchangeably. It's rather than I need to know this, it's how can I get better at this? It's asking great quality questions of yourself. So thank you for that answer. That was a fantastic one to learn from. Ian, how can our viewers and listeners learn more about you, your business, and what you're doing? Where can they go?
Sure, Moeed, thank you for that. So 2 places to go. oneupsales.co.uk will bring you to the business and what we do. And for me personally, if you go to ianmoyse.co.uk, it will take you direct to my LinkedIn profile, which links you to all my other places that you can find me.
Great, and we will leave the links in the notes so that people can access that. Ian, this has been an absolute pleasure. I've learned a huge amount, and I no doubt that our listeners and viewers have done so too. So thank you, and hopefully maybe we can invite you again, because 1 hour does not do justice to the amount of experience and knowledge that you have. Would you be open to that?
Yeah, I would. And Moeed, thank you for the opportunity to speak. I do appreciate it.
It's my pleasure. So everyone watching and listening, this is Moeed Amin. And if you have any thoughts, comments, or any topics that you would like us to cover with new experts that we can invite onto the show, do leave a note in the comments section. We are creating this for you. So we will endeavor to do our best to bring the right experts to address your questions. So for now, until the next video, thank you, everyone.